mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme hum, mani padme.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry we were a tad bit late. So we'll begin with the
Good morning.
Good morning. We'll begin with the opening prayers beginning on page 1. Beginning on page 1, all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood.
Nam kai doi nyan be san chen tam che de wa don den do ngai dan je nyu de la na me ba yang da ba do be
Jang
ju ran bo je do
Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Page 3. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind Lama Vajradhara, the embodiment of the body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching, and Lord of the Sanghas. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom.
Nam gen da da nyam de sam chen dam je jo je de sam je de yen ye ba dam je je gu san do yo dan chen na dam je je go wo ge ba Chuge Pongpo Dongpa Jeju Zajian Yungnam Pape Gende Jejen Ada Jejen Zawa Dan Jubarai Jebe Pandan Nama Tamba Nama Japsen Chewo ye dan jing ko le je la zo nam la jo zen je san je chun den de nam la jo zen je ni tan be ju nam la jo zen je wo pa be gen de nam la jo zen je wo wo kan do je zhong zong me zo yi jie jie jian dan dian ba nang lai jiao zhen jie wo.
Page 4. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path.
Yin chang jie yin bo jie jie wai san jie nam lai jiao zhen jie yin ju dan chang jie san bai ye zuo lan di jian jiao zhen jie yin jie dai ngo jie de xie jie chang jie tu ne jie ba dong wan chang jie san bie la ba la yin jie dai ren xin ne ba da de jian do la ben dong de chang jie san ne jie jie xin de jian de ne la ba la ren ba jian de la ba jie wo.
Page 5. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings.
San jie ju dan zuo jie jiu nan lai chang jie ba ra de da ne jiao zhen jie da ge jian sui jin bie suo nam jie do la fen jie san jie de bai shu.
Page 6. Refuge of all sentient beings without exception, divine subjugator of terrifying Maras, together with their hosts of demons, the one who understands all realities without exception exactly as they are. Transcend and conquer, together with your disciples, please come here to this place.
Ben zarai saman za, ben zarai saman za, ben zarai saman za, ma le sem jian gun jian gong jiu le jie, an de de bong jie me zhen jun zhe lai, wu nan ma le jie jian jian jiu le bei, yum den ko jian den de ye zu zu, gan ba ding gu bei du bei a lo ge, gen de ne wei de xiao da ba di zuo su wo.
Page 7. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the four continents, and the sun and moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Page 11. Namo, to the Lama of utterly pure appearance and existence, I offer the fundamental ground of appearance and existence. I supplicate you to thoroughly liberate the three realms. Please grant your blessings and overturn the depths of samsara. Sublime Master, wish-fulfilling jewel, crown ornament, the inconceivable, inexpressible mind of the victorious ones, the one endowed with the five wisdoms of omniscience, gracious one, the embodiment of love, precious protector of beings, I supplicate you from within the essence of mind. Please grant your blessings from within the innate nature. Please bless me that I may realize the Dharmakaya that is beyond intellect, this primordially unborn, completely pure mind. Transcendent conqueror, the one thus gone, foe destroyer of afflictive emotions, completely perfected Buddha, endowed with logic and virtue, the one gone to bliss, knower of the world, captain, tamer of beings, the unexcelled teacher of gods and men, I respectfully prostrate, completely touching my head to the stainless feet of the unequaled Shakya king. At the time of your birth, leader of two-legged beings, taking 7 steps on this great earth, you proclaimed, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise even then, I prostrate. Possessing a body of complete purity, your sublime form is excellent. An ocean of primordial wisdom, you are like a golden mountain, the one whose renown is evident throughout the three worlds, protector of supreme attainment, to you I prostrate. To you who are endowed with the supreme marks, whose face is like an immaculate moon, to you, the one with the complexion like gold, I prostrate. A flawless one such as you among the 3 levels of existence is most exquisite. Unparalleled, omniscient one, to you I prostrate. Supreme among humans, captain of those to be tamed, the one thus gone who severs the all-binding fetters, who with senses pacified is utterly pacified and skilled in peace. To that one, the one who dwelled at Shravasti, I prostrate. Refuge endowed with great compassion, totally omniscient one who indicates the way, ground basis for oceans of merit and qualities, I prostrate to the one thus gone. The pure cause free from attachments, the virtue that liberates from the lower realms, the altogether supreme ultimate truth, to the pacifying Dharma I prostrate. Having been liberated, they also reveal the path to liberation. Thoroughly respectful of the 3 higher trainings, they are a field of sublime qualities. To the Sangha, I also prostrate.
Namo Nase Namda Ge Lama La Nase Yen Su Juba Bun Kom Sama Yondra Da Sarwa Kurva Dondu Su Jian Je Lo Jiyin Nurva Zoge Jin Amasan Jame Jarve Doin Jimbi Yishin Adan Zeve Danyin Gade Jin Duwa Jumze Ramboy Lasim Nye Jeng Ane Zorwa Ande Chuni Jeng Ande Jin Jeng Asam ne jeme nomda ande londe chugu doba jinje loi jong dende de yin yeba da jomba yang da ba ra zo be song je re ba dan xiao zi nian ba de wa re ye guan ji den jian ba ji ben de wa ka lo ji wa la na me ba la da me nam je dong ba nian mi xiao jie jia bo xiao jie de 天毛没把郎过过，然的都得给个江泽路，刚子刚年做过就当这，撒钱的来恐怕对我人呢，我呢就等的来就接送。 on te te ge bai che lai chang te lu nam da gu ngan jo de su zang wa ye xie jiang zo se jie ren bo da da ba ji de song na lang ye wa 安公波中年就拉江子路，成就电马前面的位置，怎么着外起来江子路，对着就的是把也送南的。 人民前前前来江子路。 民众对我可路军在前，安跟着人境外军在地前也黄波些当年也下来的，也有小巴的来江子路，广播都接接电报。 Adam jen jen be do ba bo so na yon den jan zo shen di jin ye la chang ze lo ta bian do jia ji bi ju an ge be nian san le do xin jie de dong dan jiu jiu ma ai xie jiu qiu lai 祝你祝别老杨东，阿拉巴达拉让这个新的当代永天节，恩典的老杨创造。
Page 15. I prostrate to the youthful Manjushri, to those in the worlds of the 10 directions, however many there are, all the lions among humans who appear during the 3 times. To all of them, without exception, I pay homage with respectful body, speech, and mind. The force of my aspiration prayer for excellent conduct brings all the victorious ones directly to mind. Bowing down with bodies as numerous as atoms in the realms, I prostrate to all the victorious ones. In a single atom, there are Buddhas as numerous as atoms, each residing in the midst of their sons and daughters. Like that, I imagine the whole Dharmadhatu completely filled with victorious ones. To those with oceans of inexhaustible praiseworthy qualities, with sounds containing oceans of tones of melodic speech, I express the qualities of all the victorious ones. I praise all the Sugatas. With the finest flowers, the finest garlands, music, ointments, supreme parasols, supreme lamps and the finest incense, I make offerings to the victorious ones. With the finest cloths, supreme scents, and fine powders equal to Mount Meru, all displayed in supreme and magnificent ways, I make offerings to those victorious ones. With vast and unsurpassable offerings, I venerate all the victorious ones. Through the power of faith and excellent conduct, I prostrate and offer to the victorious ones. Whatever negative actions I have performed with body, speech, and also mind, overpowered by desire, aggression, and stupidity, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in everyone's merit, the victorious ones of the 10 directions, the Bodhisattvas, the Pratyekya Buddhas, those in training, those beyond training, and all beings. I request the protectors, the lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who passing through the stages of awakening attain Buddhahood beyond attachment, to turn the unsurpassable Dharma wheel. I supplicate with my palms joined together those who intend to demonstrate nirvana, to remain for kalpas as numerous as atoms in the realms, for the welfare and happiness of all beings. I dedicate whatever slight virtue is accumulated through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and supplicating to enlightenment. And on page 16, please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the two vehicles and their combination according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Hoi Samjian Namje Samba Dang Loye Jedai Jedawa Anche Chuen Tumon Tegwa Ye Chuje Golo Golo Hoi Damge Duje Janji Re Song Zhong Yanji Me Dao Duje Bong Zhong Ba Zerje Ngen Bo Dao Wu Le Ji Wei Xia Jie Jia Bui Xiao La Ge Jia An Zi Zi Mi Wu Zi Tu Ji Jing Wu De Ma Li Ji Jing Wu Jie Dao Wa Tam Ji Sai Ba Ge Jian Ju Ji Ji Nian Mi Li Wu Ren Jian Ge Jiang Zi Wu Mi Ju Jie Yang Jie Bu Zhong De De Zong San Jie Gen Jie Ngo Wa Ni Arang Sam Jiu Ge Ngo Sum Dong Zi Bei Zai Wei Lang Mi Xiang La Ge Jiang Zi Kan Da Zhou Zhe Dong Dian Ji Den Na De Ge Long Ma Jiu Wa Gang So Da Ten Er Dong De Jiu Jin Qian Bei Ba Zhen Bu Ren Du Wa Tam Jin De Ye Xie Namo Yang Sa Ye Ge Dong Da Dong Nu Ji Ge Zhong Da Dong Mi Ge Nong Nian Du Gun Jie De Ge Jie Da Tam Ji Ge De Da Ge Chu Den Do. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So now so today, so I think 37 Bodhisattva practice, so 29. So Hine Rabdun Dembi, Langtonki, Numo number in Yumba, Hichine, Sumi Hetan Yandan de Baye, sometime Gomba Jersey Lanes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they have English here too.
Right, exactly. Teachers are what?
29.
So sorry, I thought I had my book with me, but I didn't. So the verse 29 is having understood that disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight possessed with tranquil abiding to cultivate meditative concentration, which perfectly transcends the four formless absorptions, is the Bodhisattva's practice.
that the 다조 가르치나 nyombo 남바른 좀바 좀 다조 가르치나 가서 네캅 게테니 nyomba 바 좀버 치와라 테니 다 something 세나리 기네테니 개침부 차디오레스.
So mainly in order to destroy disturbing emotions, what is necessary is to have meditative concentration, which is developed through calm abiding or shamatha meditation.
다 티인디 수미 헬라 양다인데 바예 좀다 지탕가 저 텐도와 다 스피크 제모스 라브도가 저 스피크 제모 다티 페체메나 지 스피크 제모 파트너야 tel라 티네 지 첸나 세나리다 benan tumuk lamda uji chadi yoris benada namba mai ba to ke letni something gon ta tanda to hindu to something gon letni ji nyom ba bango no ji tni ji ta tanda nam hin tai wa yomi mimi nam hin tai te kari tindi gi tni ji karse ko ta something tni ne to gu yoris 이나다 디게 고직 something 곰바텔 때네 지형메고 지형메고 진디지 곰바텔라 고직 용몽바디 고 농토부 요리 이나야 이니 지금 코르발리 파 타토부 요 말에 스펜당 가서 어다 숨이 해지리 기타는 저다 주타운도 오지도 베나 가서 수 카리다 동감 숭감 수민감 스타 지금 같은 남기다 저당도 캐라고리 솜즈기거래 텐드 다가 좀 도방 칸발라 지다 동감 될라 되니 지 레이톡 저요와 다 레이톡 기티키나나 되니 사 베나사자 사톡 저거 다 놀라지도 지도 야체리기 숨치 적솜네 야지지드니 간덴토가 히두왕지 라소바티니 사톡즈요와 사톡지 비강라 되니 맞다 순감 세다디 카메라와 담기 타니티가 동카메라와 되니 순감라 맞죠 사 되니 순감 내리집드는 지리티 지클라르 바신 직딱 직진 토론토로 대화 체르 체모르 되는 파트너 저기도 아직 디시자 체르 노야 로지 다들 가르치나 지 대화 체르 로치 양 체르 다听得오지 서로와 다听지 지지네 사 노라직도 사토거리 다 순간다 수민감 지리드네 지 수민감나다 수미지지 미게세야 타던디 송원나지 되네 지금 좀 봐. 현도지 요러와. 어다티 사리 이나야 티네 갑라 사이 기체와 렌송이 갑라 지금 눈이 요 말이 이나야 거지 두 남실라 빼는다 단다 스세세야 단다니 이게 수미겐지 미키도서 지금 오늘 로 장인데 받더니 내가 요서와 이나야 거지 두 남실라 지 야상지 공부 토야 매와 근데 마야 그러면 너무 사는 어다 티인도 tindeje ketene ketan something gombala dene tubgre yina ya thare something gomya ti chi thiliya pha ge ne wa kurban de ge gore se ya ta tindo na isare.
So there are the four, so this is saying to cultivate the meditative concentration which perfectly transcends the four formless absorptions. So meaning that if one only follows the track of calm abiding meditation, then the result of that, if one's meditation doesn't evolve into the meditative absorption, which also possesses penetrating insight, or the Vipassana aspect, then it can only result in achieving sort of the highest sort of levels of the peak of cyclic existence, which are the four formless realms, the meditative states, the states which correspond with the four formless absorptions. So these are the realm of infinite space, infinite consciousness, neither perception nor non-perception, and nothing whatsoever. And so also non-Buddhist traditions and many spiritual traditions or practices in the Hindu traditions also practice states of meditation which suppress or pacify the mind of afflictive emotions, and yet doesn't fully uproot them from the very root. And so they also have practices in which they enter into these states of the four formless absorptions of limitless consciousness and limitless space and so on. And once one is able to develop that level of meditative absorption, one can remain there for an extraordinarily long time. And the result of this is to take rebirth in one of the four formless realms, which again are the very peak of cyclic existence. So there are all of the different levels of God realms. So there are first the God realms, so they're still contained within the four formless, the realms of the four formless absorptions are still contained within the six, or within the three realms. So they're beyond the six classes in that of sentient beings, and that they're beyond the desire realm. So the form and formless realms still, though, are considered more kind of ethereal or more ephemeral God realms. So the God realms of the desire realm are the subsequent realms of the four God realms of the four great kings, the God realms of the 33, and so on and so forth. And then in addition to
There's
that,
6 different.
and so there's the 6 different God realms of the desire realm. And then there are the 17 different God realms of the form realms. And then beyond that, there are the 4 formless realms. And so all of these realms together make up.
Formless realm, the 4 gods.
Right, so there are the 4 gods of the formless realms. And so all of and so these correspond then again with the 4 levels of meditative concentration. And so these all of these God realms together are considered to be God realms, the God realms of the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realms. And even if one takes a rebirth in these realms, which correspond with these profoundly peaceful meditative states, one can remain there for a really inconceivably long period of time, but it doesn't result in Buddhahood. So one still hasn't attained liberation from samsara. One still remains bound within the cyclic existence. And so therefore, once that merit is exhausted, then the only possible result is to fall again into lower states of existence.
Yarkhan is true, Tichi Galate, that Korantanda, Gomjange, and that's all Koranta, Korant Lamado, Mambo Anger, Inada Tinone Lama. That Jimpor Sia Jitan. tene lakchu siya de lamani denwa te tenji tene ta konso ji tinyam tene komya kona tija komya tene je yungbe kala tene ta tamango di ji ta tanda ringbo ta lakchu de ta ngone ji sibi zemo 바로 랩데 저 텐데 라마텐 힘바레 텐데 텐데 다 대가 나기 상지 김된데 코나다 대가야 랩데 텐데 다 전화다 전화다 단데 샤스타 텐데 텐데 다 대사가 티야 요 말레스 텐데 다 저랑 아직 심진의 파편 도야 심진의 파 티키투라 합디 요레스 송요로와 이나 상지 김된데 기타 티 배치한들의 사가지 땡땡 요사리스 동아지 노반로지 승금도 손지네 담아지다 정보를 사주니 보들이 샤지네 코랑 지다 가서버려 양초를 지 탈바 탐진 준비기다 통통이야네 되네 신요라고다 된디 저당다 되 단다 가서는 스피크 제모세야디 지고 지난 투모케다네 다 꼼트리지 차디요사리스
And so the Buddha, for instance, prior to attaining enlightenment, when he gave rise to a profound sense of renunciation and longing for freedom from samsara, he left the kingdom behind and he took up a life of homelessness. He took up the life of a wandering spiritual mendicant, and he, at that time, he studied with two great masters who were the greatest meditation masters in the land at that time, and they taught him various methods of meditation, and he spent a good deal of time with them, receiving instruction and perfecting their instructions, and he was able to take their instructions and fully manifest the fruition according to the levels of instructions that he had received to the fullest capacity. And so he actually was able to or he arrived at this peak of existence, what's referred to as the peak of existence in his meditative absorption, the levels of absorptions that correspond with these four formless realms. But he knew that this didn't quite feel like it was enough. He knew that there was more. He knew that he still hadn't completely broken through to full awakening, to liberation, in fact, and awakening. And so the lamas that he studied, or the teachers that he studied with at that time, and told him that he had already accomplished everything, that he had reached the highest level. But the Buddha, knowing that there was more than that, continued on his own until he was able to break through to fully perfected liberation and the complete omniscience of fully perfected awakening.
다 대인도 다 조카르세나 단다직다 기타 네캅 그 뉴몬바 망고 농야라 근데 삼텐세야다 삼텐세나리 신내세를 자친 보르바 미네 메타 메와리 이네 양다 듣지고 근고 농와 지고 그 팽기요 말이 대인도 있더니 원의 사제 고고요나 근데 다 참바다 닝지 장nhập 삼고고요와 어다 딩리게 송는 데베 도네다 단다 직 세미 헤세나리 삼텐 헬이야 내고나 근데 지금 가서 바로 지금 올라서 왔다 댕가던데 가장 휴요로와 김반내 고조들이 바로 지금 되네 라고 위해서래스.
And so temporarily there to get to the point where one is able to subdue the head of the afflictive emotions, so to speak, or to pacify and still the mind to the extent necessary to then break through to special insight, or to then be able to meditate on the ultimate meaning, it's absolutely necessary that one first develop meditative concentration through calm abiding or shamatha meditation practices. However, that alone is not sufficient. It's necessary, and it is sort of the common foundation to all levels of meditative absorption. But in addition to that, then of course one needs to cultivate the qualities of love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So together with developing meditative concentration, it's necessary also alongside that to cultivate the boundless qualities of the four immeasurables and the six perfections or the paramitas.
That's sometimes the Jitang was sometimes say the teaching study that some say the ten say do that some say na jig some no right similar same day. Then ten say the jig that tembo senjura mewa yungu yorta the la page and he jaga be mumbo yosarwa yinayang jig tanda nga zu individual nga zu some tambina nga zu kita samba senare sem senate tembo yo mare tini ta te tembo chaya la ta nga zu zamden kumbu yorwa nga zu tembo kandiji yo mare hyuina nga zu ke samno di ko ji ta nekabri ti ina yang ji tembo kandi yo mare di nga zu tembo juni yo mare nga zu ta tirwa ji lungu je kinala tarcho shawa na yiri hakoso tini koji kari long kari jamna ko tini logro ko shali jamna ko parjo solo yo chari solo long jamna tini no lo yo chari ta tini ko tempo junior marwa jikbe tam ta bas tuzu de yo
Charlotte no tini sola
the long jamna long shali jamna they fly kari yore
they yapo samotang tu kumare tata ya te lab na mato te sharla nu rawa
shani long jamna tini fly te no
la
cha no gres tini changli long jagi yona
sola
tini sola pe fly yo no ko kona tempo yo mata ta tena yi nga zu semde tempo je yo mata samsang kona bien do cha yi le lang kon do cha ko wan sho no gre samsang hedang ko wan sho no gre samsang semde yo re semde ko wan sho no gre samsang be 차도 요 다 간단 용모 빼면 뭐 여러 와. 다 되니로 지지 고 라와 주는 몇 가든지 용대 그러고 다 되니 다 딜이 마용 위기 치들라 가리는 거잖아. 다 상태 공부에 센터 템포 잡아. 변나지 변나룽부 가리 잡나 다쳐 마요와. 소야 치다 변나지 남도 중거리 이디 이나야. 남도 티기지 꽝 티 마송와. overpower 마차위 치들라 다 상태 공부. 예정을 that page and he tini lo je yesa de yang sam no himbaji dam ta sam no momo ta yesa wa
So the benefit of really developing stable meditative concentration is that as a result of doing so, the mind becomes very stable. So really, if you think about it as individuals, for the most part, the minds of individuals are not really stable at all. They're kind of all over the place. And so for that reason, we really need to put in considerable time and effort to stabilize the mind through the practice of developing meditative concentration. It may be, that temporarily there's some bit of stability that we achieve, from time to time, but it's often only sort of temporary. It's not a really deep and sort of solid stability. It's just like, and it's, the state of our mind is really determined by conditions. So if there is, our minds are like flags in a windy plane, or in a windy place, as soon as a wind that is blowing to the east is stirred up, then the flag is, fluttering it to the west, or in the western direction. As soon as the wind is stirred up, blowing to the north, then the flag is blowing, fluttering in the southern, to the south. And so in that way, the mind is really never stable. It's blown about by the winds of conditions, by whatever it is that arises. And so there's really no stability there. And we can all identify with this. There's always, moments where the mind becomes stirred up by anger or anxiety or jealousy, and so on and so forth. And so there really isn't any kind of depth of stability there. And so if a meditative concentration is developed, the result of that is that the mind becomes very, very stable. And even if emotions and concepts arise, the mind is not swept along with or overpowered by those thoughts and emotions. And so, for this reason, it really is so important to develop a pretty stable meditative concentration.
我在台湾能以我做的一趟三天是呀，同我们讨论我做的西德湾宁波，西德湾一边宁波，是吧？让一个搞让我呢，这我三天了的呢，就有了没吧，是吧？台湾能一个个上节个三趟也没哇，我的天气要的是天的，他天气个个套把起吧了，套把起是那的，我从有把起吧了，天气他那内卡个的呢。 number 多错，错上面怕，就也要开，气头了，
Makeup 공다.
makeup啦的，就 number 多怕要了哇，就到 number 多怕他们 makeup 了哇，个 temporary makeup 嘞，因为样个 makeup 嘞是我做就三天当，现在马光米呢，个 makeup 的这个，看来忘记忘了个哇，我听的，做我做工，家是呀，他三天工是呀，他做了。 做卡恰的有些呢，就让给举了有别的呢，就现在吧里边人不，我从就下去的，现在吧里边人不考上样，三斤的了考上样，就我做他那样，就公家高呀当，可就养小就生活当，就他那样，开始个就三年高呀看要嘛的意思，因那样同大的开始呢，我说他全部的你看给。 지금 용목에 또 쏟아다 담기봐 창위 지도를 되니다 삼다 공고요. Yes.
So, of course, beyond the meditative concentration, there is the foundational ground of the Buddha nature, the Tathagata Garbha. And this nature is unchanging. It is indivisible from the enlightened minds of all the Buddhas. And so, once that becomes accessible, once that essence is directly seen, then there's nothing to improve upon, other than abiding in that nature itself. There's nothing to be done, but to develop the meditative concentration is the condition for enabling the mind to actually be able to see its own nature, to actually be able to directly realize. Otherwise, there's so much, the mind is always identifying with the stream of the conceptual processes and the emotions and so on that arise. And so the recognition of what of one's experience is that, rather than the intrinsic nature which underlies all of experience. And so through meditative concentration, little by little, one gains control over the temporary afflictive emotions and discursive thoughts, and one is able to settle within a really stable depth of meditative concentration, in which the mind really doesn't waver at all. There's no wavering. And then gradually there becomes the shining forth of, or the natural recognition of the intrinsic essence of awareness, the Buddha nature, that on its own starts to occur. And once that occurs, there is no need to sort of alter that, or to make it any better, or to brighten it, or to cause it to be more stable, because it intrinsically is endowed with all of the perfected qualities. But in order to get to the point where one is able to abide within that recognition of the natural state, first one has to purify the afflictive emotions through the process of developing meditative concentration.
Tene jitanda something dati something la ye na tene da yewa da somdo ji sare tene da thangbo de la ji chule ni be something zo da chule ni senari chule dewa ni sen chu gang ya chu gang ro to ya ki ne be something tene yonten do be something randa yonten 타마데 가르스나 되네 즉 심지한게 동치비 something 송 테니다 당보디 당기 휴거나 이래 즉 출레니비 something 세야디 즉 당아주 샘 코랑 그뭐 티가나 네토비아 틀라 출레니비 something 송 나도 출레니 마토야 가리용 거라서나 당아주 넘버도 뭐지 샤고 거로 당기 콘 휴거나 이래 지금 넘버 똑바 뭐뭐 샤움베 깔아다 가서 추네 두고요 말 추는 말과 지 참상 해당랑 그래 참상 창도랑 그래 참상하다 텐데 지 참상랑 심제요래 간다 텐데 얘기했고 넘버 똑바 나 저거지 유비 깔아 가서 추를 네 두고요 말 지 추남가 다 간다 추그 남가나 양가 좀 로트고요 이 텐데 남는데 그래 양면은 랑라 유베키 베네지 히데와리 니모세네리 산제 키토타 이얼메와티 티 요리디나 가서 나포마제 세네리 지팅오 만톤 세네리 오다티 고뎀로고요 와 인텐디 고티토라 네토고요 말이 텐디다 지 용마도 파티 지 담비나 테네 가서 티 초치야 네그리 예스 텐디다 테리 통보 chula ne senari chula dewar ando senari wada tike something thambot chabi yore tene da nipa di wada thambot
The sangma tsimgi ngowo giden ki korlarwe.
dita thambot karsena di chula da nebe something seyaji dowa something di karsena da ji 아주 용어가 메인한테 추가 네트워크로 추치 톡으로 이나 용어 왕통 줘서나 근데 주 네트워크 말아
So there are three types or three divisions of meditative concentration. The first is the meditative concentration, which sort of dwells or stays upon the Dharma or rests on Dharma. And so chula nepe samten, right? And then dewar nepe samten. So there are two names. Sometimes it's also referred to as the meditative absorption that rests upon or dwells within bliss. And then there's the meditative concentration, which accomplishes qualities and there's the meditative concentration, which accomplishes the benefit of beings, or the purpose or the benefit of beings. And so the meditative absorption, which rests on Dharma, or which dwells within Dharma, is both from the relative perspective, being able to essentially dwell within full concentration, free of distraction, on the practice of Dharma, or the object of Dharma, whatever that may be. And then there's the ultimate level meaning of resting within the Dharma of the fully perfected nature. So actually being able to abide with stability upon the recognition of the true nature of awareness, the true nature of the mind. And so ordinarily, without this type of meditative concentration, even when, for instance, we do various Dharma practices, it's difficult for the mind to really be fully united with that practice, because the mind has this constant arising of discursive thoughts and afflictive emotions. And sometimes they're are the arising of thoughts that are connected with anger, and the arising of thoughts that are connected with worry, the arising of thoughts connected with desire, the arising of thoughts connected with jealousy and competition, and so on and so forth. And so as long as the mind is not able to just completely merge with the object of its focus, and instead is carried off by the thoughts that arise, then we don't have the meditative concentration of resting within the Dharma, or resting upon the object of the Dharma present in our practice. And so that is what first needs to be developed. And then when that together with that stability, or the ability to abide single pointedly, when there's insight, when one has realized the true essence of one's intrinsic nature, which is no different from the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas, then that meditative concentration is the meditative concentration of Dharma, is or resting within Dharma, is referring to that ability to abide within the recognition of the natural state. But until there is extensive purification of the mind stream that occurs, until we really become liberated from our obscurations, then we're really not able to abide within that recognition. It's really not accessible until that level of purification occurs. And so the more, as the process of the purification of afflictive emotions and discursive thoughts occurs, then the meaning of that first type of meditative concentration, of abiding within Dharma, kind of goes deeper and deeper, and progressively deeper.
다 니파데 용텐도 베케 something zon에 다 용텐도 베케 something 디 가르잖아 단다 콘큐바 나데 예레 되네 에지 something 용 공베 까블라 되네 에지 맞소 베 뇽몽바 되네 제그로 와 제레 제그리 니네 양가 좀 톱지 르부여서 와 누판도 지 르그리스 틀려온 베 까블라 가리 톱레스나 가능가 좀 해당도 제그리 되네 양 해당 파 ngô nông thập yā kē nīpā jī xēdāng dī wāng tō mā rō wā o tā jī rāng lā tīne samrī ngā tsō kānyēn rō simtēn rō tīne yung gārī yīnā tī yung wā tī kō tsūrwa mē wā chā yō mā rō wā tsūrwa mē wā chā yō mā rī particular kārsī na ngā tsō tā tāndē kē jī pēnā tā mōn rō wā lū dēn yīnā jī kō āmbō ngā yū ngā tindiji ko chobdewe tene ko rangi ke 지 뇽몽비 제약다 젠 망보지 그 초는 거여와 대가나이랑 셈 넘버 똑바로와 다지 남히 드미와 가서다 지 남히 초초 세나리 남히 초가 세나리 대가나이 드니 안보 텔야 남히도 안보르죠 안봉가래 유가라서 와다 드니지 망보지 튀음이 까블라 드네 직다 용마지 용거와 레디 이나야 다직 삼내 공비 까블라 드네 직다 직 안봉가 유가라서 튀지지 용마 랑랑 용거래 고지에서 다직 젠로지 튀 용거래 이나야 고지 티 왕토만도와 베네타 단다직 심지 중요하게 젠로지 중비나야 고 심지디 직 단기 something 립했더지기 방고 농로야. 어? 지 양만랑 그 르르지 나기 요비나야 되네. 지 레가 순종아 첩디요로 양. anga 순종아 첩디요레 군중화데 야 다다 무세야 그 every second 랑가서 체인치기요레 되네인데 삼상가 술루고 되오요레 삼상루고 되오요 말에 어딘지 레디 이나야 지 수고 되오 메베 까블라 양 되지 셈라 되오 메와데고 지파왕 고 농토바 파왕 조토바라와 되지 용구요레 다 남준도 있는 거 수지 루포 되오 메베게 티 기젠치지 루포 되오 메바 티게 가서 생왕 조원도 그러와 생활 줄이 되는 가서 땅가 나서 답변 난 땅가 되지는 가 가오면도 땅가 나타내 단다랑 매와 차고도 땅가 나타내 빼면서 누기야리 땅가 따는 배 생때네 배 나타도 누보랑 오지 샘지 되네 배 되니지 차고 그래 되니 소왕 요러와 이내 양 가서 산테지 공배 까블라 담보 쳐바지 요리 뒤네 양 초와 요나요 되네 파왕 요투브레스
So then the second type of meditative absorption is meditative concentration is the meditative concentration of accomplishing qualities. And so what this is referring to is essentially like the power and strength that is developed together with the ability to concentrate the mind. So there are all sorts of different kind of miraculous powers and abilities that can develop through the power of meditative concentration. But most importantly, there is the power of not like being able to hold one's own in the face of the arising of, for instance, strong afflictive emotions. So one develops a power to, withstand the power, the influence of the afflictive emotions. So it doesn't mean that the afflictive emotions don't arise. So perhaps, moments of strong anger might arise and so forth. But one is at a point where one isn't overwhelmed by that power, that one doesn't fall under the power of the anger. So it isn't that one no longer feels the intensity of the anger, but one is no longer taken over by it. So right now, of course, we are embodied as human beings. We have a physical body that we experience everything that comes along with being physically embodied as a human being. So the experience of the five aggregates, the constant functioning of the five senses, the senses interacting with the objects of the senses, and the perceptions that arise as a result of that. And so therefore there are always, as long as we are embodied as human beings, there will be conditions, all sorts of different conditions that cause reactive mind states or thoughts and emotions to arise, be due to the functioning of the five senses and the six types of consciousness and so on. And so there are the arisings of afflictive emotions, even if one has developed meditative concentration. But when there is strong stability in that meditative concentration, rather than the afflictive emotions sort of taking causing the mind to fall under their power, the mind has a power over the afflictive emotions. So we're able to actually control those thoughts and emotions. And so, for instance, if the conditions for anxiety arise or worry arise, because of the qualities of meditative absorption, one is able to subdue or diminish, cause the power of that anxiety or the energy of that anxiety to sort of be held under control, or for that power, one is able to subdue the power of or energy of that affliction. And for instance, if one becomes sick, like physical sickness arises, as long as we are connected with this body of the five elements, then there are physical ailments and illness that arise from time to time, and yet the body is constantly changing. Every second, there is change occurring and the potential for change to occur. And so ordinarily, when, if one doesn't have a stability of meditative absorption, when sickness befalls us, or when the body becomes sick, then often that physical illness ends up affecting the well-being of the mind. And so, for instance, we think, oh, I really don't feel good. I'm just like completely I feel completely sort of unable to do anything apart from being completely overwhelmed by this feeling of illness or pain. And so in that way, one isn't able to overcome the effect that the illness has on the mind. Instead, the illness ends up extending to the mind, in fact. But when we so for instance, you think, oh, I feel sick. It's really just terrible. It's completely unpleasant. When I won't be okay until this illness is gone, or until I get over this pain. And so one is completely overwhelmed by the feeling of illness. But when there's meditative concentration there's the feeling of illness, there's the feeling of pain, but one is not completely overtaken by it.
진짜 기타가서도 지 모남들이 여러와 지금 I happy to die, I happy to sick, we'll be happy say all that. 근데 용기 요리 다 뒤섬노지 땅으로 와 나랑 그 섬노 나랑 그냥 명세나데 근데 용기도 근데 다양 다가 배나 고도 스페지 다 배지 나야 알아 벤 도반도지 카보로 와 수도 쓰이는 카보래 오다직 나네지 서로 다가 배 나선 배지오도 써야지 용기요 말와 얘는야 그 간디지 섬노 땅 거래서나 나차티 고 인컴포터블해 다디 와 comfortable 거 랑이 용기요래 얘네 디 랑이 디 용도 다 대양 그 요당 짠 레몬 보절을 때네 그 나기요라 와 디인도 다 뒤기치도지 아주 개발도야 대간난 이게 지 면사야 되게 고요래 와 되게 지 나자데 거지 다위나 지금 륜디게 나절을 지 심지어 향발래요 비주 마음이야 펜토토비야 되게지게 지들라 지금 아주다 면사야 이날에 멤버대야 이날에 되게 대간난 이 쪼가스나 아주 데려와 주 라메고고래 주 가스나 지금 레디지 장야 치들라더니 아주 냠냠치 꼼자고 그러와 티니지 고고래 다디 다디 나네 가스는 다 아주 지 나차 텔라 가와지 쪼와지스 샘게 땡네와 샘게 땡네 가네지 것은 쪼와지 사람들 되니 용구도 와 가서 지 나나요 나나 야보래 잠바 희나 희 야보래네 레잠바다 오지 쪼와지 르기도 와 어디 인제미 인가 나사도 고고도 깨쳐 말와 이 나사도 인컴포터블해 그 나사도 지 temporarily 고 지고요 말와 얘네요 more deeper way 와 the underneath the temporary 와 surface 나 아직 쪼와지고다 나사도 인지 도보래야 삼바 틴디지 리젝트 마임바 되게 뭐네로와 이는 가서 탑기 싫어요 말
태즈 망다오 숨겨래.
오케이
So there's the prayer, that we often recite, which is what the way Drupal said it in English was, I'm happy to die, I'm happy to be sick. So I think the more common translation is something like, if I get sick, so be it, let me be sick. If I die, so be it, let me die. I'll be happy, right? And so, of course, when it comes to illness and death, it's pretty unusual, for anyone to be like really eager to get sick, like nobody wants to be like, come on, yeah, I really want to get sick. I really wanted to get sick. So of course, that is not the point. But when there is sickness, when there is, the threat of, like when there's a serious illness or the threat of even death because of illness, of course there's discomfort there that is experienced. But there's also the ability for the mind to be completely at ease, and in fact for the mind to be able to bring this experience onto the path of Dharma practice, because in particular, the struggle of illness is an opportunity for purifying really vast amounts of negative karma. So when there is the right attitude or the right approach in the midst of that experience of illness, then it becomes like a really tremendous accumulation of virtue. And that isn't to say that one shouldn't do what is necessary to recover from the illness. So we need to take medicine, we need to see doctors, we need to follow our doctor's instructions, and do what we can to recover, to get better.
And also as well, julme gore is the Tigana omja nyamlechiadi, juchadi or nata in Kamudibu, juchadi.
Ju cha yore shira.
Juyoro nayak ju kachin navre. Or Judy, Gotiga, Signayo Marwa. Oh, Tinity. Telako nyamlechi goda. Nyamlechi valadeni, could jutpa la.
And also, in addition to, doing what is necessary to try to recover by seeing a doctor and taking medicine and so forth, it's also always important to address the cause, the actual root cause, which is karma, really. It is some accumulation of negativity, which is ripening in the form of illness. And so just as important as relying on doctors, if not more important than relying on doctors and medicine, is also practicing or engaging in meditation and practice also as a means to recover from one's illness by addressing the actual cause, the underlying cause. And so there can, in fact, be even a feeling, that according to that prayer, let me be happy, or let me be sick and I'll be happy. So there can be joy, an actual joy at the experience of, or in the face of the experience of illness, that one can actually take delight in that experience of being ill. Especially, of course, there's discomfort, there's pain, there's a lack of well-being. But this is actually sort of on the surface. This is a more kind of a superficial experience of the illness, but from the very beneath that, or from the sort of at a deeper level, there can in fact be delight or joy in the process of being ill, or in the experience of being afflicted by illness, even, and recognize, the same with the experience of death, or confronting inevitable death. So it isn't that we, that we should feel, or that we have to feel kind of like bring it on, or really eager to become ill. But there can be a complete shift in one's attitude when one does experience, an unexpected illness. Again, it can be uncomfortable. It can be, there can be suffering and pain there, but at a deeper layer, there can be real delight, and in particular because one recognizes how profound the level, what a profound level of purification that is actually occurring through that experience of being sick.
superficial vela ngaso nyamsu chaya yo maris pen superficial vela nag yorwa ngaso uncomfortable cha de o tha nga pe chu google na ko masivares the superficial way we cannot come together, so this happy and uncomfortable we cannot come together. Wa ni yung thong marwa yin yang ko superficial way uncomfortable yore tin yang ko deeper way we have to the delight. Yeah, we can.
So so there are two kind of levels here of experience that are being experienced, it sounds like, at the same time. So in the superficial level, or the superficial way, there's no way to experience, you can't be both experiencing delight or comfort or pleasure and discomfort at the same time. But on the deeper level, so you can have, on the superficial level, you can have the discomfort, and on the deeper level, you can be experiencing the delight or the joy. You can still be experiencing pleasure.
That color we already said na, but ngara nyam not ni yungudo. Kasina, that and nag yorwa. But not na de kaula. Ku sem ki den pe. To no ta komdo javina. Tini coach simple you be kaula kom enjoy do chaya do wa sugo de maybe na. Tini ko ti to take it in ko nasa de ya chan wa. Bena. 가장 사와지 따임바 kulangsa chado do. But the tea so no tini koji. The superficial tini ngatsu da over control chitu is that thing layer what is chaba implemented.
So actually, Drubala says from his own experience, he has the ability to experience the deep joy or delight, through meditation. And when he meditates, when feeling sick, when there's physical discomfort there, and to really thoroughly experience the enjoyment of meditation, even though superficially there's still pain happening, there's still pain and discomfort. So for instance, the other day he had a fever and he wasn't feeling well. Actually, it was quite intense, the discomfort. But then when he meditated for a while, he was able to completely, the joy that was found or the delight that was experienced in meditation was able to, not at first, but ultimately to completely override and then actually transform the physical discomfort of that experience of illness. And in fact, his fever then went down.
that tender what you can't bear why that tindi casu carsidan as joy seadi koyovina that tenaying as nyomba that jikarwa nyomba de tambo semte seadi longer yore semte lambe kabla jik superficial that go semte di joyo marwa then as chado yore superficial chado yobe kala joyo marwa yene ti want mando ti yo la koran nupa semke nupa de la jik tene tene koji ti hiadang kwang de mando nyomon karsen jik semte kwang de mando tene chi tu yore es tene dati ko nipa de karsen tene da karste yonden se da hinet yonden is
and so
hinet nipa de
So actually, it's the same thing that happens with the afflictive emotions. So it isn't actually that we should expect that, through meditation or through the meditative concentration that we're actually, that there's some problem with the arising of the afflictive emotions, that then we don't feel that the discomfort of their arising. But it's actually a very similar process. So the afflictive emotions can arise, the mind states can arise, anxiety or jealousy, for instance. It's really just like the discomfort of illness. The sensation of jealousy is really uncomfortable. The sensation of anxiety is really unpleasant. It's really uncomfortable. So that sensation on a superficial level is there. But when we have the ability to abide with when we're able to access sort of the deeper underlying joy of meditation, for instance, then that ends up overpowering the temporary arising of the affliction. And so that's actually what is being referred to here in this second type of meditative concentration, which is the meditative concentration of accomplishing qualities. So it's that referring to the powers that are developed, such as these, through developing meditative concentration.
다 대가 나기 왔다 들이 다 뒤죽대 타마데 삼텐데 심지어 통직 삼텐리다 되고 심지어 통 아가 랑킹 용 반도 투고나 심지어는 탄토 투고와 보다디 베제다 시시다 자고 무슨 정도.
So then the final or the third type of meditative concentration is the meditative concentration which accomplishes the benefit or purpose of sentient beings. And so through developing this level of meditative concentration, it is what leads to accomplishing one's own purpose, and then likewise being able to accomplish the purpose and benefit of others.
드네 대가 나기다 대 다보 터치한 엉터리 정도 다보 터치 кинола
Dambu chaptik
다데 베리로도 드네 제타 창조 람종 스와타 창조 다 제타 타고타 제나 송 칼송 요세나 티니 히니 추바미나 스타 히니 마곰나 티니 오시지에게 말이스
Ngushi.
오시 용구 말이스
Mhm.
티니 계속 오시 미미나 티니 맞지 샘지한테 통치 누구 말이스
Mhm. So actually there's a quote in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which actually comes from the lamp of awakening, or the lamp of enlightenment, where it says that if one doesn't meditate on shamatha, or if one doesn't develop calm abiding meditation, then one won't develop the powers of clairvoyance. And if the powers of clairvoyance aren't developed, then one won't accurately know what is needed to achieve the benefit of beings, to achieve others' purpose or benefit.
다 오시에서야 돼. 다 가서지 썸놈 못 당고 그러와. 오시에들라 오시에서야 되다. 지 가서 만통와. 아 조다 마음 바이나레 간다단나 마음다 근데 마음다 독선도 용서기로 와. 이따들라 보면 이는 오시에서야 되다. 아지 마음 바지 힘바지 삼당고 요로. 티니 오시에서야 돼.
Got it?
아
Maon got it?
아지 오시에서 하고도 약간
Right.
어다지 골라 근데
Oh, okay.
이 도나트 칼라고 그러잖아. 오시에서야 되라. 지 비치 로데 고 삼지 메차바 요사레스 가능하다 대요지 맞다 오시에서야다 똑바지에서야도 직관이사리 대인이 베나 샤샤비나 맞어 오시에데 힌지살라티니 베몬보요레 베나 샤샤비나 텔라구요 페이지와 맞어디 쇼지 갑지도 와 쇼가 갑도 다 거기요
그래서 직진을 도시기 하나 하고.
디네 디 우응지요 우응페 충중 쉽지요와 디네 야다나 우응디나데리다 건남 충중지 통그와 남 하공데 스페이스 이나 건남 통요와 남 통솔랍 초그와 이나 차상 통요 말이야 치료도나데 간데 베스 리미트레스 와 스페이스 이나 고 갑제케 미러직 사이즈는 다꼭 충중 항상하러와 뭐 됐나 이게 지금 오신세야디 지 그 세기만 보여서레스
Okay. So the powers of clairvoyance can be really extraordinary and extensive. So there are different degrees of ability. Sometimes there might be, the ability for some to foretell something that might occur in the future, or to read others' minds, or there are a lot of different also practices of divinations, a variety of different ways of 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 predicting the future through various forms of divination and so forth. But the clairvoyance that comes together with realization has different levels of scope that also develop. So really, at full capacity, it's incredibly extensive. It can be incredibly extensive. So for instance, there's an example that's given that that what we see, the power of our sort of insight, or our ability to kind of really see what's going on, is as if you took a pin or a needle and you pricked a hole in a piece of paper, and then you look through that tiny hole in the piece of paper and you see space, you see like a little bit of space there. But if you remove the paper completely, you see an entire world, in that field in the field of your vision. So what we typically are able to perceive with our limited kind of vision is like that tiny pinprick.
then tang a super cha chavina, Tandaji Givike Chula Towajiate, Yichiji Yorwa. Oh, Givadubala, Tene, Tene, Givike Pinoyote, go Mushin Chadi Yores. Karsana Koti Mamo Bandu in Tandaji Givadrobaran, Mamo Balab, Tandana in Libmarwa, Tindu, Tiantine, Komushi, Chunuji Chadi Yores.
So actually, we already have some clairvoyance. And the reason why we have some clairvoyance is because we know, we understand karma. We know that virtue leads to a certain type of fruition. So we understand the benefits of virtue and wholesome actions. And so therefore, this is really kind of something akin to clairvoyance. It really is that like clairvoyance to understand that.
Oda Tigana Yiki, Natsuki Ranki Julatini, Numba, Yoatela, Kale Kaleji, Gom Jane, Numba Chitoyata, not Hako Yori, Tiango Hiri, Maton Togu Marwatano, Candis Chigidu, Gom Tigiko, Bagila Yomba, Kandi Meva Chigidu, Tiniti, Detail, Karona Pota, not Tongu Marwa. In a Chitango Hesiata, Kojono Vijita, Moshi said, Manton Wajilla, then not to cheat on Gentana, Mohila Yorwa.
And likewise, the ability to, has our vision becomes sort of gradually clarified through the process of meditation. So we're able to see with a greater degree of awareness and mindfulness, what it is that is actually arising in our own mind stream or our own continuum. And we can see with a certain amount of detail, the kind of wholesome and unwholesome seeds. And so this also is not so different from, or this is an aspect of the clairvoyance, sort of the initial ability to really see with that kind of supernatural clarity or vision in a much broader or to a much greater extent.
Tigana Yikitanga to give to Yamla Chivi Kavla, Tina Kariung Yori Sedu, Tanga to senses, Senate, Sorwaji, Ogan, the chief who do someone which live study. In a could Jumsen Hida Yomata, Jumsen Shiviji, not to the Tongu Yomara, Momba, Karchagre, Tongu Martina, what I'm going to engine in Chigu do somebody live grace. Tiantine, Mushik Chaji Chadi.
There's also something like a propensity, for instance, for virtue, like an intuition with regard to what is the right thing to do, what is the action that needs to be taken, what is it that I need to do in this situation. And there's kind of an intuitive understanding that is based on virtue, that's based on understanding the right course of action to take that accords with dharma or with virtue. And so maybe there isn't a clear perception of how it will unfold or what it is exactly that will happen as a result in the future, but there is an intuitive understanding of what needs to be done. And this is also a type of sort of like clairvoyance, a type of clairvoyance that develops.
Oda Tigana Ying at that Jedan no chola Yorway, and a Shachona Wina, Kaduina, Namantasuke. Chigia Lamando to Zola Yang, Chigna Leka de China Yapoyo Sadi, Kachigo Sadi, Sketchik Tidio is. Ina Yanta, Tian, Tinichi, Ta, Lama to Zola, Tamda Yoro, in a monegi. Tinsank Lamajek, Comon by detail with your Karcha, the Karchape, Toya the Pecha, Pecabores. Yina Yang, Koji Chu Yamlanchi, Nipalatene, the senses or. Your choice no you know the China Yaxat is study. Lama dictata tongue your marity in a young, could survive your senses, Libdu, Cotigana, Dotoya, 텔라테네 지다 디스 모시지 이나 디양코지 마음바다 고 데치는데 치기도 데치는데 치기도서 통과야 요 말이스 이나 콜라메 철반다 오지 되네 추념네 징해게 이나 곰장에게 이나 고철바지 레부요레스 보다 느리치는 약사레스 라비아 철바지 레부요레스
So in the West, we don't have so much the practice or the tradition of asking for divinations and things like this, but in the East, or not even necessarily divinations, but we in the East, sometimes there's a lot of reliance on one's spiritual teachers, to tell them what it is that should be done. So for instance, someone might go to a lama and say, what should I do? There are these two choices. I don't know, should I do this or should I do that? Or something like this. And so, of course, the different teachers, the different lamas, have quite a variety with regard to, the way in which they might respond, to those kind of requests or questions. And there are very few who can who would look into the future and see all, of the details that might result in one course of action as opposed to the other. So they might not see with complete detail, but
that's really rare, but possible. But so these lamas, whatever not only lama, but individually, everyone's realization is different. But at this time, like probably we can say impossible whatever details what will happen next and the next time, so but
so but they will generally have like a sense. There will be kind of a feeling that they'll get of, they might not be able to sort of specifically see or understand why they have that feeling, but there will be a feeling of this is the better choice. And so then they'll let the person know without necessarily saying, oh, if you do this in the future, this will happen, or if you do that in the future, that will happen. But there might be an intuitive sense which can kind of sense that what the better choice or what the better course of action may be in that situation.
Tiga na ye ke tene jik pena chaga ta spiritual tanda lando kisi ngoshi ma che na tene semja tong che ka bore sung do indi ngoshi che se ya de ta zo karsen tangi kong thiwa na ge ta ji pe han sa ya ke ta realization yo myen ji yin bi na ya chu mong ba le ji chung du ni chung du chu tene ta dun ta je ma la chu khala de sa ge do dun ta je ma chu sa cha telen ro do se ya ke tinde ke ko ngoshi ti 지 희행고구여서 말이 계속 희비나 지 고바준테 강요 말와 이내야 다지 뭐시시들이 강사 팔죠 메텔라 지 간디 지는 그 개발도 두사리 간디 지는 지 쿠게 지 대파 빵사리 보다 되니 지 되네 다 희행고구여레스 대마토 베킹가서 100 behind 100 page the lumber 간디요 tina dialog chi hia de chi china hia ka bo re tina ya te chi ko mi yu tini ngo xie tini de ma re sta nga sa ngo xie le de chi ta dialog cha ta chi thong de ya do ji zom tang gro wa tini sa ma re
So in any case, it is said that if one doesn't develop clairvoyance, then it becomes difficult to accomplish the purpose or benefit of beings. And that isn't to say, there isn't like a need for, really vast and sort of specific clairvoyance to develop, like, to the point where someone would say in the future or next week from now you will be in this place and you will eat this type of food, or something like this. But or that this specific, all of these specific things will happen, at this or that time. So sometimes there are accounts of people who had that type of clairvoyance. That type of clairvoyance isn't necessary, and if it is, there's not a need to develop, for that type of clairvoyance. Yina yang yuna karela in komta yuna the gopa gogiyomare yina yang garsi yuna karela. Oh, but if it's there, it's also not necessary to let on or to explain those things, or to say there's no benefit in really expressing, that kind of vision or clairvoyance to others. The most important type of sort of forevision or clairvoyance is that which helps direct someone toward the most effective course of action that will enable them to avoid negativity, and likewise to be able to direct someone to the most effective course of action that will help them to accomplish what is virtuous, to practice virtue or wholesome activity. Other than that, to really be able to see with hundreds of pages of detail into the future is not really of any real benefit.
Yina yang ta ji de nyamle chi tombo teso hingi mares ji detail ji na te mares nyamle tombo le de so ji ngone tane tanda be mek se wan de toma na yi chi higre so ndo mo ba le chalame ji ji kari ba cha chang tong to gres.
However, there are practitioners, some really advanced and highly realized practitioners do have very detailed vision of what will occur in the future. They can see into the future with a really crystal clear vision with as much detail as what they presently can see right in front of them. So it is the case that that kind of ability to perceive it can be developed, but it isn't. It's just kind of like a side effect of practice.
变种的学员呢，培训们，他提到培训托米那年年变家了吧，对不对？听得呢，那托米给阿妈，给的呢托米当年年是吧？托米年年说的啊，可能你的阿妈几个哇，他的陆续几个哇，阿妈的他的因为他那是 related but，可能你托米的年年的阿妈的，这呢，当年嘛，给弄到，听的被，听的因啥咯，给弄嘛到，听的热了不多，这呢，被没事马上被用的全部因啥咯哇，伊那样，这呢，就提高了哪两条了，这呢，他就没忙不说，听的提高了，这呢，去出门吧，过头这呢，忙就是没出路有啥咯哇。Tene me tsai sonde tene jik amati ki tene samno tangta ni chungo bande pe jachimbo jik pergo kudo sang tene samno mambo tangde tene jik morang ke jik nipa roji tene ta kabo yotsarwa tene tene morang samno jik tangji ta jik nga maung bale ta ngarang ke puk jik jiye na sorwa tabji tene puk te jiye na tene jik puk ti nipo tene beme siwe chungo bale tene kepa jangju tene jine tene maung bale pentok sare endo samji ta tamade tene morang bugni jeverwa ta tomi te yenyen sare tejen ta tamata tamha kogwa ngombe tomi yenyen ki gachu kasi so lo ta teri ina yang ta tanda di rongde teri tene amerika korani te amerika ngoni ninja la pemma siwiki kepa imba tene pemesin kepa penta tene cha tene toba yang tombochi tene yosarwa tene amerika ti ta ngoni korani samji me chawri sha ta tindu korani de su 똑반 토구요나 로 samjitene 아마텔레테네 바주지 요레스 데 바주디 요데테네 바주데테네 데 아마티 바주데다 Tiene sene ba ha ko do ina ti la ta hing ma paju di la pu de ta pori no wa more dos tiene paju di candice do candice dos ame ke ja tibres ti ti du tiene yenya de tarom ke gi yo sa pe mi zin ke gi yo sa ina tomi de da be to pa be tomi sa son pa le do la do tomi tiene te ko yenya pe chang bo yo sa wa te yenya ko chang bo chi de ne de ta pinja chorang chi ta chorang thang bo la te ne je le la go la do te tomi chi ta ong be ga la te ne ko ta da ame ko ko la kan di yo wa cha thong do wa pe pu pe te thong yo le te thong du te ne ame ta tomi kala or na wa ta di pa chu di pe pore sha te ne je tan nach pore sha Tienen gola de la de Tobado del Dada. De la tis carbogidus. Labiorwa. Te la dutene. Tene tigela. Tene yenya claudio ta carsena. In yenya ta ko pachuk pit so candis chagiowa. Niena la candis degiowa chat hakogdoa. Te corasamnoji dans the piece mena pachuk tit. 다 토믹 딱 make 통요레 스페탈라네 바주 옹호 때바나니 통요레스 디인디 다 페체메네 고 따요 통요로 100% 통요 이네 다 디페체 나마디 바주 나마다 가도 있는데 랩고에서 와 하고도 삼지테네 이엔양 칼라브세나 오 다디 레타 체타치 파리샤스 토미 게 송바치 파리 이나야 토바텔라 디 까고버리 메도스 nga me ki tse me la tip carbodis to sta te chi la ro wa te lam tine ta je le phachu chi yo wa phachu chi ri tine ko yenye demba ro cha res te yenye demba cha du tine ame ko ta ngone thane ta yenye pe me sin ke pa da tine pe to pa thom ri du tine ame ki ti sia tine yenye la ta chi mo ro zi do wa tine yenye ki la ja ro mare ama tine mares 토미게 통구 어스페다 단다 파주 비비 코랑페 뉴트라 파주 비비지 니에나 강하고 차다 탈람랑 통구 어스 이능이 통구 말레스 이능이 파주 차다 간데 차요 티스트 나마디야 안디가 레고 어스 티니 니티 라브레스 이능이 딱고지 로브종 치원도 제일 때는 라브요스네 토미게 딱다 통요래 예송로 어다 되나 이거 지 자성 통구도 와
So dampo de me shorwa de Nalanda la de gare de ting penakache yang me de digging moonlight samaro.
몰래 인사로 레다 토미 얘네 제제로 와 이렇게 tanto te copiando kan te gas me mo chorbiyo sarwa
So you all, many of you are familiar with the story of Asanga and Vasubandhu, who were brothers. And so their mother actually was a nun. She started off as a nun before she got married and had children. And she was a nun who had really extraordinary qualities. And there was a period, prior to the great destruction of Nalanda, there were also a period of fires that occurred. And so there was one period where there was a great fire at Nalanda, and she sort of became inspired as a result. She thought, it's so important that there are, that the lineage of scholars and practitioners really be maintained regardless, and especially
chung be pecha mo tseng no yo wa de be ka ina da juba ya sa pecha do tseng do re ma ba chung ba la pe chenya ya bo yung sa ma re sam ta tin lo ji ni
so
chin ta mo rang chi chung ba ma ba chenya chi de wa chi pecha mo bo chi ya sam no tang yo re si na ya ko ji mo rang ka tin
So she thought, at that time during the fire, there were a lot of the scriptures on Abhidharma in particular that were destroyed that as a result of the fire. And so she thought it's so important that the Abhidharma, the teachings of Abhidharma, be preserved, that they continue to increase, and that they are preserved and like further expanded upon, and so on. And so she thought, her inspiration was to do that herself. But then she thought, well, I don't have the power to do that myself. And so therefore, I should have children, sons. I should give birth to a son or sons who will be able to kind of carry this great intention forward. And so she did just that. She ended up having two sons, and these two sons were Asanga and Vasubandhu, who became extraordinarily both learned and realized. And so their mother was aware that they both had really extraordinary qualities, but she was especially curious as to who actually had clairvoyance, whose experience was developed to the extent that they actually had really clear
realization,
clairvoyance that indicated their realization. And so so actually among the two brothers, Asanga was the one who had more developed realization, but Vasubandhu was very learned. He was extremely knowledgeable and very sharp. And so the mother, one time there was a cow that was soon to give birth, and so the mother asked the two what was the sex of the calf, or the unborn calf in the mother's belly, and what color was it. And so first Vasubandhu thought, well, I'll let Asanga go first, because he knew that being so clever, he knew that Asanga would be able to see, actually with his clairvoyance, he would be able to see into the
almost on eye,
almost like as though he were looking with his own eyes into the womb of the mother cow, and to see the calf there. And so Vasubandhu told Asanga to go first, and then Asanga in fact did see very clearly the appearance of the calf. So he said that the calf was male, and that also he was black, but that he had a little bit of white, like a white stripe on his head, kind of going down onto his nose. And so Vasubandhu, being really clever and smart, knowing, that how the baby calf is sort of wrapped up, in the fetal position in the womb, then he knew that the tail would, kind of at that time was or that the tail was touching the forehead, or wrapped around the head, so that it was touching the forehead. And so he trusted that Asanga saw directly. So he thought, oh, okay, so this is what he's seeing, but he's probably not aware that that white stripe is actually the tail, the underside of the tail. And so then Vasubandhu said, so I see the same thing, that the calf is male, and he is black, but there isn't a white stripe on his head or along the front of his nose, but mainly the head, the forehead, sorry, just the forehead. I'm thinking of a horse, I guess. But really the white is on the underside of the tail, on the tip of the tail. And so then their mother thought, once the calf was born, it was as Vasubandhu had predicted. And so she thought how incredible, he is really, the most kind of spiritually developed. He has a higher realization. But then Vasubandhu explained to her that no, actually, that is not the case. It is actually a Sangha, because he saw directly into the womb of the mother, and I only deducted what this was based on reasoning.
我的点的就当然我些肯定用个要的，因为样他懂，和我先他亲要嘛了哇，别那阿三干着我伊那，同没着我那个我先他亲要嘛的，我先他的亲要那他呢，他懂提地方个没通嘛嘞，他懂地方通个哇，伊那没恰当通通个要的，因为样他懂就个俺妈当 this arrow 恰个要的哇，天的呢他打做连的是呀，我先是呀的打做连的的，因为切到啊的。 现在的상제 마토 미송도와 상제 기타 상제도 오이나 되네 베다타 고 디테일 코나 베다타 지 분야마지글 말루바 베네테 중도와 지금 마지에게 되네 도 칸도 나초바 요레스 칸도 나초바다 되네 지코텔 디테일 휴지 요레스 이나티 디테일도 컨디스 중 유 컨디스인바 레 컨디스 사요 되네 싱그레 송도와 뭐다 되나 이게 tini xeya la tini ko tangi kontiwa na li namka chatang tonya la tini pe nga zo taring mo dogo yo sares yina yang ko ji nga zo ya lo lam go zo bi ka la ko ngo xi ren ba xin ji le mo yo sares ngo xi ti le bi na tini ji rang tong ro to ya dang tini xian sim xian tong ro ya tini zo da xian sim xian tong ro to ya xiu qian yo sares.
So even still, Asanga's clairvoyance was still limited. He was able to see as though he were directly seeing with his eyes, but he couldn't see beyond that. He couldn't see deeper. So there was still error in his clairvoyance, because a real clairvoyant perception, or like the fully developed clairvoyant perception, involves seeing how everything fits together with all of the causes and conditions, all of the ripening of sort of the web of the causes and the fruitions, and how they all interact with one another, and seeing things as they actually are in with great detail, just as the Buddha sees things in their entirety, as they appear in their multiplicity, as they actually are in reality. So it is actually the Buddha, and only the Buddha, who has the capacity to see with complete clairvoyance all of the causes and conditions and how they weave together, interact with one another. So it is said, for instance, that the Buddha understands, there's not even like a tiny hair sort of out of place in that vision, or there's not even like a tiny hair that is missed with regard to this complex network of causes and the web of causes and conditions. And so it is said that he understands perfectly the plumage of a peacock, for instance, so how each and every hair of, or is it called a hair? It's not a hair. Each strand of the peacock's feather, every cause and condition that goes into, or that results in each strand of the peacock feather, and how all those feathers fit together and create the overall plumage. So every aspect of each part of the peacock's feather and the complete plumage of the peacock is understood in its entirety. And so Dine di jima la garila in ta ringbo lam gut suk du ngonji re.
그러니까 단위직 바로와 다 당봉 같은 당봉 고속도네 지금 남가 충충 통야로 나 있고 오히 요래라 되네 거지 until the kind of completely see the space 요거로
So so in any case there's that whole range of clairvoyance. So like the example that was given of the tiny pinpoint, looking through a tiny pinprick in a piece of paper and seeing a little area, a tiny piece of space, compared to that level of complexity. So at the beginning, starting out on the beginning of the path, there's some little degree of vision, this sort of supernatural vision that starts to develop. But then that really is nothing in comparison with the full scope, of unlimited vision and perception.
아니야 대가 나 이당 가죠 라마당 로마 송요로 라마당 로마 송야들라 되네 지 라마 누파 요와 잠지게 야지 로마 티키지 대바다 당나미위나 지 모시 희야데 연구요서 말이스 야마 루주카히도와 지 라마지 좋다 땡통냐 라마지 요위나야 로마 노트 rum바지요나 좋다 땡통 그래 라마티 이나 라마텔 로마데 노트 마롱비나 테네지 테네 고 라마티키 좋다양 땡통 말이라 모시야 이토 말이스 대가나 이 개지 라메게 대바 로메게 대바 치메 같은데 요비나 그 라마코란 냠떡바시다 미위나야 그 티식 라메게 제타 랍탄도라 그 로메게 대바 침보 요비 좀 센들에 되네 지양 라마코란라 대베 누가 되게 직 전함적 도야 되네 직 라마라베 준둔도 요와 통야 라마라 오히요 요와로 통야 되네 용거래요 송도와
So it's also the case that these kinds of qualities can be passed from teacher to disciple.
Or the interdependent.
So there's interdependence there. So for instance, if the student doesn't have faith, then there's no way, for those qualities to be passed. So the teacher is not oh, the signs of accomplishment. So when so if the student lacks faith, then there's no way for the teacher to pass on those or to show the signs of accomplishment to the student. They're not able to experience those signs of accomplishment for themselves. If the student is not a proper vessel or an appropriate vessel, then they are unable. The teacher is unable to pass on the signs of accomplishment to the student. But if the student has faith, if the student has really strong faith and devotion, even if the student doesn't have, isn't very intelligent or doesn't have very many qualities, through the power of their faith, then they're able to actually like fully receive, the full kind of transmission of the blessings. The blessings are able to fully enter their mind stream together with all of the qualities and signs of accomplishment such as clairvoyance.
positive positive
So even if the Lama themselves, actually the Lama doesn't even have qualities or doesn't have the power to transmit those qualities from their side, however, if the student has really pure faith and sees their teacher in a really pure and positive light, then even still they are able to receive those blessings that they perceive. They're still able to generate those qualities and signs of accomplishments.
Oh, no, sweet. Tom.
Mhm.
That's okay. We get take it. So one time the story, I think one time I was there in Dalai Lama teachings. So I think I tell you before too. So one woman escaped from Tibet to India. So along the way, so he was like a lot of there are snow mountains kind of past, and maybe no food. So he thinks 100% he died. So but he has extremely devotion to prior to Dalai Lama. So he ready to die, happy to die. But then suddenly he saw the Dalai Lama in the border. So sort of like kind of give directions. But anyway, he didn't die, and he able to escape India, see Dalai Lama's teaching, so tell the story, say Dalai Lama. So then Dalai Lama that time he told me, so he said, I know area, I know power. I go to Nepal, whatever Tibet border. So even though just no concept, no feel anything, but he said possible because they have faith and devotion. So something like power by like unchanging, unshaking, and the faith devotion. So the like blessing is possible to get. So everyone. So who has the faith and devotion. So like that woman. So okay. So now dedication.
Okay. So we'll do the dedication prayer on page 24.
Question, Rinpoche. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, okay. What?
Yeah, there's a question from Demelia.
Huh?
From earlier, she had a question that said, "Are accomplishing the 4 levels of absorption part of the path of liberation? Can liberation be accomplished without achieving these levels of absorption?"
So to door dubai inji minji de zume something ji du gogrebe the tarpa toyagi chidu the pena tarpa
Really?
doegi
Oh, that's
lam
it.
shorla drawo yorebe yang na di madrupne tarpa yang top sigrebe.
치탕다
Dima
그
told me.
배제 랑가라고 있는 당 가서 데려와.
Mhm.
지 지양매와 세야 다 당번 가서디 지양매가 nothing 닉스다 곰고요 말이니 그 넘버 똑같이 지양매가 곰고요로 와. 그 드니 직다 랑가디 그 we can say yes or no but I think.
The shira koma song. So the namto me badang chiyang me ba chipare lagyobe.
레다 그 당번 곰등 가서 지 지양매와랑다 말이기네 지다 랑가디 가는 지 남히세야 그 타이만 나오지로 와 남힌 타이. 코티네 야지 다티 그 both way 나오지레스. 그전도 고야 나오지당.
So yinji minji drogo gyomare.
Really.
So
기타 신이 된 바타 보고로 저 된다.
So it's necessary to develop really stable meditative absorption or meditative concentration, but not necessary to actually develop those levels of the 4 formless absorption. But he was saying that he thinks that actually there are kind of other levels of accomplishment that correspond with these 4 formless absorptions.
이는 양다 단단가 또 가르스나 참바다 닌게 요디 고다 디스 카로 차되기 어레스.
But these different states are kind of qualified by the development or the presence of love and compassion and bodhicitta.
So then you have another one, or that's it?
I think that was the only question, Rinpoche.
Okay.
So we'll recite the prayer of dedication. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings and samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Dragungpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dupont. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Have a good day, everyone.